The Cavaliers stumble through the month of March. Is it a sign of larger issues in Cleveland? The Pistons, Pacers, and Bucks continue to battle for the right to play the Knicks in the first round. Who should New York fear the most? And Matt and Hayes break out their Marchometers to tell you what's real, what's fake as we inch closer to postseason play. That's all today on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are free. We are available wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. I'm Doug Branson, host of Locked On Hornets, and your Shot Clock Sherpa, guiding you through the NBA's biggest stories every day with the help of Locked On's local experts. And with me, as always, are two of Locked On's premier national NBA experts from the Locked On Nuggets podcast. He's the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. He's our Man of 1,000 podcast. It's Matt Moore.
No matter how confident you are that you have a car jack in the back of your car, make sure you have a car jack in the back of your car. I understand you think you have a car jack in the back of your car. Just make sure. Take a second today and go be like, do I have a car jack in the back of my car? Go answer that question affirmatively. Just trust me.
And if not, call Jared Jack and he'll help you out. From the Locked On Bulls podcast, it's the Prince of Petty. It's Hayes.
I'm just out here doing my best to keep fighting the good fight. That's all I'm doing is fighting the good fight of basketball conversation and honesty. That's what we're doing out here.
Both of you sound like you had a Tuesday.
It was definitely a Tuesday.
Yeah.
Also having a Tuesday, the Cleveland Cavaliers, who suffered a 132-119 defeat at the hands of the Los Angeles Clippers. This marks their second consecutive loss and only their third losing streak of the season. And this comes after a 16-game winning streak. Kawhi Leonard led the Clippers 33 points. Ivica Zubac had 28 points, 20 rebounds. I'm going to ask Matt and Hayes about the Clippers in a second, but let's stay with the Cavs. 45 points in the first quarter, 17 points in the fourth quarter. Offense a little all over the place. Donovan Mitchell struggles mightily from the field. Opening question, are the Cavaliers running out of fuel that can be refilled with some rest, or is the clock getting close to midnight on their storied regular season run? Matt, we'll start with you.
What am I going to say, Doug? What am I going to say?
It needs more Wade?
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry. That's what you always say when we talk about the Cavaliers.
It's March.
Thank you, Hayes. Last
okay.
year, the Boston Celtics lost twice to the Atlanta Hawks. They lost twice in the span of a week to the Atlanta Hawks. Didn't seem to bug them much once April came around. Beware the Ides of March. The Cavs are going through it. It's a West Coast road trip. I'm not overly concerned. Is there a possibility of them sliding a little bit? For sure. But I still think that their best punch is going to be better than this. This is probably more impressive for the Clippers than I think for the Cavs. I don't know that it's like a fuel or any sort of stuff like that because just like they've managed their minutes pretty well. I do think, though, that this is one of the problems. Again, this is just one of the problems with the regular season. How do you play as well as the Cavs have played for 6 months? They've played this well for 5 months. Do you want to know what the coolest things is? I wrote them off in January because I was like, oh, they peaked, and now they're going to start sliding. Nope. They got better. They were way better from the end of January through this week. And now this is just what happens. It's hard to play at that level for 6 months of regular season basketball. But playoffs, I'm not as concerned, Hayes.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about it either. Here's the thing. I actually have a different perspective. Let me flip this real quick. It actually maybe just a little bit, makes me more hopeful for their championship run because they're not trying to fight and scratch for every regular season win, which is going to leave them a lot more energy. Every time we see this team fight for a record or try to get the most wins where they already have most things locked up, it ends up ending in disappointment. So I'm actually happy that they're just going through March. They're going to be able to turn it back on in April. They'll be perfectly fine by the playoffs.
Losing is winning. Winning is losing. We're upside down here already on the Locked On NBA
Cats
podcast.
and dogs.
Let's go to Danny Cunningham of Locked On Cavaliers with his observations on a suddenly struggling Cavs offense.
Going into Tuesday night against the Clippers in the month of March, the Cavs were the number 16 offense in basketball. Donovan has not been great. Before Tuesday night, shooting 35.4% from the floor and 20.5% from three in the month of March. The Cavs offense can be elite if Donovan Mitchell is not at his peak. The Cavs offense can be elite if Darius Garland is not at his peak. But I don't think that they can both be what they've been in the month of March. If one of those guys gets back, and I do think that we're seeing some good things with Darius Garland, I would expect the offense to bounce back and start being a little bit more consistent. But it just has not been the best thing to watch lately.
Okay, so let's leave the month of March. We're going to pack our bags. We're going to drive out of the month of March, even though Matt shakes his head. But Matt forgot his jack, so he has he can't do anything about where we're driving this car right now. So we're going to leave the month of March, and I'm going to ask this. Do the Cavs need great offense consistently from both Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland in order to win the East? Not the regular season, but to win in the Eastern Conference Finals, to get through this playoffs. Do they need both Mitchell and Garland to be playing well, Hayes?
Yeah, I think they do. I think that they not only need Donovan Mitchell to be Donovan Mitchell, they need this playoff run to be the birth of another star, like an absolute star run from whether it's Mobley, whether it's Garland. They need somebody to step up, so why not Garland? I think that they absolutely need that. Not to say that they still can't go very far. Heck, they can maybe even still win a title without it, but if they want to secure those chances and do the best they can, they're going to need both those guys to be at their absolute best.
I think one of the good things about how they built this roster is that you can have a different guy every series. And that's really important to me, that if you face a team where, let's say you face a team that plays a lot of drop coverage like Milwaukee. Okay, so Darius Garland is one of the best floater shooters in basketball. He can go absolutely nuts versus that team. All right, if you play a team that switches more, Donovan's so good versus ISO switches. All right, that's Mitchell's maybe turn. That to me is kind of how this is going to go. That there's going to be these sequences. I do agree with Hayes though, that to me, like, I think Evan Mobley might be the most important Cavalier when it comes playoff time. I just think there's a lot of matchups where I'm going to look at it and go, if Mobley has a really good series, they're going to be tough to beat. And I think that's going to be really important. However, I do have to return to this, Doug, because it's important. Do you know who the number one team in offensive rating in March is? Guess.
I don't. The Kings.
It's the San Antonio Spurs, Doug. Does that sound like serious basketball to you? Does that sound to Cindy Lou Who like it should be what basketball is? That's my point here, Doug. That's
crazy.
Okay, so let me ask you this. I think, and you could argue with me on this, and maybe you will, but I think the Oklahoma City Thunder are largely viewed as a team that if they lose in the conference finals, people are going to look at it as part of a process because they're so young. If the Boston Celtics lose, if they trip on a rake at some point, people are going to say, well, they lost the fire that they had on the repeat, but maybe this lights them up for next season. A lot of guys still under contract. Those losses would not be viewed as existential. But what about Cleveland? If they lose early in the playoffs, or even if they lose in the conference finals, if they don't make it to the finals after this regular season, are you good with them running this experiment back, these guys back? Or would you want the team to look seriously at changes to make them more playoff formidable, Matt?
I think it's good enough. I don't know. How do you get better? You added DeAndre Hunter. You got Max Strus. You got Dean Wade. You got you got Ty Jerome as a six. Like, they've got the guys. If they lose, it's probably Jared Allen who goes. And I don't necessarily agree with that, because I think that you're going to run into the other problem, which is like now Mobley struggles versus bigger lineups. And you have another problem that you have to address. I think you can play whack-a-mole when you start being like, well, that didn't work. Let's change that up. Nope, that created another problem. There's unintended consequences to these moves. And so I would hate that, because I think Allen provides a very important role in this team. But if they do not get it done this year, I do think that probably Jared Allen is the guy that gets moved.
I wouldn't be against them running it back. I had some questions on them running it back this year, and look at how that turned into. Like, they invested in all those guys. So if they wanted to give it another shot after this year, go back to the drawing board, have a full season with DeAndre Hunter, maybe, add someone with MLE or whatever they're going to do to strengthen up their bench a little bit. I wouldn't be mad at keeping 99% of this roster together and just taking another shot at it next year. You've been so dominant that I don't think that you want to give up or make a big swing yet, because you can make a move that could actually throw off the balance to what Matt is pointing to of your roster. And then you're looking back at it saying, okay, now we've actually made things worse, and it's harder for us to just get back to where we were.
Okay, how about the Clippers? Are you ready to believe in Kawhi Leonard again, Hayes, in a postseason? 33 points. They're 9 games above 500, 4-game winning streak. I know it's March, but it seems like they're heating up. What do you think? Are you ready to believe it again, Hayes?
Again? I mean,
for the first time. Yeah, you did. Totally fair. Totally fair. Totally fair. Are you ready to believe now?
If Kawhi Leonard is going to be healthy, yes, they are a team that I think can make some noise and fight to go. I don't see them getting past or going further than either OKC or Denver, in my personal opinion. But you can't count it out. If Kawhi Leonard is healthy, I mean, he makes that team so dangerous. But I will say this. This offseason, if they don't, and barring a deep playoff run, I think that it's time to trade Kawhi Leonard personally. And that's not my bias against the Clippers aside. I just think that at this point, you've played most of the season without Kawhi. You've seen where you've been. I would look to do that this offseason and see what you can get out there personally.
Maybe this is the one, right? Like maybe now that we've all given up on them, now that we're like, I'm not buying into the Clippers ever again. They're always going to be hurt. Maybe this is the one and they make the run. I think that's one of the most fascinating questions. Is it's going to be Cleveland or Boston in the East. There's nobody else. Sorry, Knicks. Like, there's nobody else. It's going to be Cleveland or Boston. The West, as good as OKC is, and they deserve the respect of more respect than this, but I do think that I'm of the opinion now that with where we're at with parity in the league, someone's going to make a surprising run. And maybe that just means Western Conference Finals and they get stomped by the Thunder. But the Wolves we've mentioned, I'm backing a little bit on Memphis. Maybe it's the Clippers. Maybe Kawhi is just healthy. 6th in offense, 8th in defense in the month of March. The Raptors, by the way, are 6th in defense for how serious that is. But like they were just off of this terrible run. They were like the Clippers spiraled for 3 weeks, and now they're coming back out of it because you're never as bad as you are or as good as you are. It's hard to ascertain, but like, look, if the formula is elite defense, which they've shown all year, Harden, Powell, and then Kawhi being Kawhi, that's a good enough formula to make a run.
I think what I'm hearing you both say is you're ready to turn the page to April. You're ready to get some of the answers to these questions.
Yes.
And you're not the only one. We've got some tape from Locked On Pistons. They're asking, can they beat the New York Knicks in a playoff series? The Pistons, Pacers, and Bucks all fighting it out for the 4, 5, 6 in the East. We'll get to that. Plus, we're breaking out our Marchometers to tell you what's real and what's fake in this kooky month of NBA basketball. That's coming up on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. We're getting closer to the playoffs and things are kicking off in college basketball. It's all heating up around the game that we love, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, it's simple. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's so easy to use. It's available in over 30 states, and it lets you mix and match projections across different sports. This week, you can lock in Luka Doncic for more than 25 points, grab Jason Tatum for more than 8 rebounds, and the best part, Prize Picks makes it fast and easy so that you can set your lineup in under a minute. And when you win, your payout hits your account in as little as 15 minutes. Plus, don't forget about their Tuesday promotion. Every Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25%, giving you even more value on your picks. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Give it a try. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends at Hungry Root. When it comes to grocery shopping and meal planning, I've always struggled to find the time between work, life, and trying to eat healthier. I'd buy things I didn't need and still end up stressed about what I'm actually going to cook. And then I discovered Hungry Root. It's been a total game changer for me and my family. Hungry Root handles your grocery shopping and your meal planning, recommending meals based on your taste and your health goals. From anti-inflammatory to high-protein options, they've got it all. And the best part, every meal is ready in 15 minutes or less. Quick, healthy, delicious meals delivered straight to your door. It doesn't get easier than this. Even my toddler, a notoriously picky eater, loved every meal I made with Hungry Root. It made me feel like a rock star in the kitchen. You can feel like like a rock star too, you're going to love Hungry Root as much as I do. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box and a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Use code LockedOnNBA. That's hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Code LockedOnNBA. One more time, hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Code LockedOnNBA. Don't miss out. More Locked On NBA ahead. Thanks again for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Your favorite NBA team has a free daily newsletter. Go to LockedOnDaily.com and subscribe to stay up to date with local expert analysis around your team. Maybe your team is the Detroit Pistons. The Pistons play the Miami Heat tonight amidst a heated battle for seeds 4, 5, and 6 in the Eastern Conference. Pistons currently in 6th, which would pit them against the New York Knicks. Today's episode of Locked On Pistons discussed the chances of a series win if that's how things shake out at the end of the season. Let's take a listen to that.
Chance to knock them out? I think yes. The Knicks are exploitable. Like they're by no means perfect. I think that we've seen teams like do a decent job of slowing down their offense. They're in a ton of close games. They win most of those close games because Jalen Brunson's been the clutchest guy in the league.
I would definitely try to stay away from Milwaukee because Milwaukee has Giannis and he's going to be the best player on whatever floor he plays on until the finals, really.
If you told me that we go into that series and you know, Cade is the best performer in those games, it wouldn't shock me at all if the Pistons walked out of there with a win. Duren would have to continue playing the way that he has, right? We would need kind of an A- series from Jalen Duren, I think, to have a chance. I think Malik Beasley would certainly have to show up. Are there reasons to worry? Yes. That's why the Knicks would be favored, though. Like, they're a very good team, but could the Pistons beat them? I think so.
If they play the Knicks or the Pacers, Cade's going to walk on the floor and feel like I'm the best player on the floor and I can get us a win.
All right, how about that from Kuka Hill? Is there an argument, Hayes, that Cade could be the best player on the floor in a series with the Knicks over Cat, over Jalen Brunson, or would he have to prove that by actually winning that series?
I think he'd have to prove it by winning it. I think that like I can I see a world in which that happens? Yeah, maybe. But Cade hasn't been in those situations before those guys have. No matter how the level of success, they've been on that stage before. And it's a little difficult to go into your first playoff series and immediately come out and be the best player on the court. So, not to doubt Cade Cunningham and his talent, but I would not bet on him to be the best player on the floor this first year, just because usually through the playoffs, it's one thing that's pretty consistent. If you're a young team, you fail first, and then you learn from that failure. You come back better the next year.
For me, it's all about game one. If that's a series, it's all about game one. What you got to do is you got to go in there and you got to have that game where it's like, man, this is just weird. You know, Knicks crowd is up. They all think it's like a normal game, but like the vibes are weird from the very start of the game. Shots are missing. All of a sudden, Pistons are up 7. What? Pistons are up at the half. What? It's fourth quarter, and then the Pistons hit them with a late run, and all of a sudden it's like, oh man, Pistons win by 15. And now all of a sudden New York is just like, what's going on? I think there'd be a little bit of panic. I will, in New York's defense, I will say this. They faced them 3 times this season. It has not gone well for the Pistons. The Pistons have the 6th worst net rating against the Knicks that they do against any team in the association this season. Okay, so they've gotten stomped by them by about 6 points per 100 possessions, giving up 120 per 100 possessions on defense. I don't look at like regular season results as much as I look at the matchups, though. And the matchups, I like theoretically when I start gaming this out, I'm like, I really like this. Cat having to play drop versus Cade, that's really promising. Jaden Ivey back, that's another like quick wing that can really give them problems. Their ability to space the floor, their ability to get out in transition, their size on the interior to be able to defend in space on Cat. I like all these things. JB Bickerstaff did not have a good playoff run with the Cavs. He was not good in his first run, especially versus this Knicks team, nor the second year, I thought, versus the Magic and then the Celtics. I do not think he's been a good playoff coach. But they're going to need to really, this is going to be a vibes thing where they just have way more energy, they're more locked in, and all of the things go right for them. But I do think it's on the table with how balanced Detroit has been this season.
Hayes saying that Cade Cunningham needs to lose before he can win reminds me of the NBA reporter that asked Cat about, NBA history. Says you have to lose before you can win. And Cat responded, how much do you want us to lose? We've been losing for 20 years. Like the Pistons have done their fair share of losing. I'm sure they would love to win that series. But who should the Knicks be most afraid of? Should it be the Pistons, the Bucks, the Pacers, maybe the Bulls? Or should they be most afraid of themselves, Hayes?
Ooh, that's a great question. Probably themselves, to be honest with you. Like, when you look at how things have kind of fallen apart for that team at times, I'd say the biggest test is probably themselves, at least initially to start off.
Probably it's the Pacers, because defense is their weak point. So you don't want to face a team that's got like a really high powered offense. To be honest with you, like everything we've seen from the season kind of says the Knicks are going to be okay. It may not be great, but they'll be okay until they face Boston or Cleveland. Then they're just going to get stomped. That's like where they're at, is like definitely not top 2, definitely not 4th or lower. I'm a little bit worried about Milwaukee. I'm a little bit worried about Detroit. I'm a little bit worried about Indiana. So like, I think all 3 of those teams are pretty scary. For me with the Knicks, it's just like, can you guys defend? Can you guys actually find a way to defend with Jalen Brunson and Cat on the floor? That's what all of this comes down to. That's what they should be most scared of.
Going back to the Pistons, are you at all worried about their inability to beat teams above 500? Only 14 wins this season. The Hawks, who are below them in the standings, have 20 wins against teams above 500. The Bulls have 13, only one less. Any concerns there, Matt?
Yeah, I think a little bit. It shows that their ceiling is a little bit low, but then I think they've gotten a little bit better over the last 2 months or so. They've gotten better as the season has gone on. Again, that's really impressive considering they started off so well. So they've shown a couple of abilities to go on the road and get these big signature wins, and I think that's probably promising. So I think when you look at that, it's more of, the first part of the season, they were very much beat teams worse or as good as them, lose to everybody else. And they've kind of evolved to having a little bit stronger of a right uppercut. And I think that can go into the playoffs pretty well. They're getting better, and that gives me some optimism they can hang.
They had 3 wins all last season against above 500 teams. So everything's trending up for them. I think that's the important thing. Everything's trending up here for the Detroit Pistons. So, yeah, it's a little concerning that they don't have the best record against above 500 teams. But I don't think anybody's necessarily looking at this Pistons team as a contender right now. Like, what they've been able to do to go from where they were last year to where they are this year has already been great. Just now getting that playoff experience, they'll come back even better next season.
There's another team in the East that is really struggling to beat some of the best teams in the NBA. I'll tell you who that is. Plus, we get out our Marchometers and tell you what's real, what's fake in this crazy month of March. That's all ahead on Locked On NBA.
Spoiler, it's all of it.
Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%. Plus, you also get 4% APY on your cash in non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate subject to change. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 a month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national savings average. Account interest rate claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18th, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. Got something exciting to talk to you about. Let's see that.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
Thanks again for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Maybe it's your first watch on YouTube, youtube.com/@LockedOnNBA. In the last segment, we talked about the Detroit Pistons, their struggles to beat good teams. I found this amazing stat from Mark Stein's Substack. The Milwaukee Bucks, 0-11 this season against the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Boston Celtics, the New York Knicks, and the Oklahoma City Thunder. They are also 0-2 against the Golden State Warriors after a 104-93 loss last night, despite the fact that the Golden State Warriors were resting Steph Curry. We like to play a game on this show called How Cooked Are They? So, Matt, get your oven mitts out, open up the stove, tell me what's the temperature on that venison.
We're like I think probably around 95 here, going towards 135, which is medium rare. It started brown quite a bit. It's funny. I like the way that they play when I watch them, and they don't win. It's like this team looks a lot more functional than they did last year, and then they just lose the game against these good opponents. Some of it's been injury stuff. They had a really messy middle of the season. I think Taurean Prince has given them some good minutes. I think a lot of this for me, Hayes, comes back to if they had a different coach, I would probably feel differently. I'd be like, I'm not worried about it. He'll figure it out. But with Doc, I'm kind of like, you are who you are. Like with Doc, it's just like you are what you are when Doc Rivers is your coach. And they're like a pretty good defense and a pretty good offense. Giannis can obviously go supernova, and that can bend matchups pretty quickly. Dame hasn't been good enough. And their other guys have kind of slid. I hated the Middleton Kuzma trade. I'm concerned pretty heavily about Milwaukee, but I'm not willing to write them off yet either.
I'm not willing to write them completely off. They're not overcooked yet. It's starting to get a little concerning though, because we talked about the Detroit Pistons and their record above 500 teams. Like the Milwaukee Bucks only have they're 11-18 against above 500 teams this season. So that is concerning. So Listen, you always want to trust Giannis and like you said, his ability to turn it on. But there is something about this team that feels like they're good. Make no mistake about it. But it just doesn't feel like they're good enough to really do anything meaningful. Now, matchups play a big part in that as well. And I think that's what's going to determine it. What their matchup is in the playoffs, that's what's going to determine how cooked they are, because it can go very left very quick for them.
Matt, you mentioned they're pretty good offense. They are pretty good, but it's a little bit of a strange offense. They're 16th in frequency at the rim. They're 29th in short mid-range frequency, second in long mid-range, which you can chalk a lot of that up to Giannis, who is taking a ton of mid-range jump shots and hitting them pretty well. They're great in the half court. They don't get into transition often, and when they do, they aren't that effective. Can they make that style work in the postseason where maybe it hasn't worked as well for them in the regular season? Like, are they getting ahead of themselves? Is Doc preparing them for playoff basketball, or will they find a matchup that's just going to trip that offense up?
It's interesting, right? Because like a team with Giannis, you don't think of as like they're going to be better in half court. You think like, oh, they're going to be so killer in transition with what he's able to do, but he's been a monster. Like they're plus 8.1 in on-off differential with Giannis on the floor. It's one of the best in the league. Like that's 95th percentile league-wide. You want to know what's actually been really bad is Kuzma minutes, which is yikes. The bench has gotten better. I think the problem is maybe that their starters have not been as good as they need to be, but I think in a series they can. I think it's interesting because if we just like zoom out and we look at these records, like you mentioned, and these type of things, it should be the Knicks are way more likely to make an upset versus Cleveland or Boston. And I don't feel that way. I feel like the Knicks are way less likely to make an upset. And with the Bucks, I'm like, I don't know, man. Boston's always had trouble with Giannis. If he gets downhill on them and they are actually knocking down shots with Taurean Prince and those guys, Gary Trent Jr., I can see that getting competitive. It's tough. And I think it's one of those things where I think the Bucks are either, I would say that the Bucks are either going out first round or conference finals and probably not second round. That's how I feel about Milwaukee.
You feel the same way, Hayes?
Yeah. Milwaukee, I just don't see them going for it. They can make it out the first round. I'm not too worried about that. But like any further than that, I just don't know if I believe in them at all.
All right, March NBA basketball, it's chaotic, it's kooky, it's tanky, stats run wild, players start doing as much talking as they do sitting out of high-profile games. We need a way to measure how serious some of the things we're seeing this month are, so we've consulted with the greatest Locked On NBA scientists that we have at the Locked On Podcast Network, and we come up with the Locked On NBA Marchometer, a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being a Tibbs level of psychotic seriousness, and 5 being Joe Mazzulla, who I can't decide if he's our beloved game's greatest comedian or deadliest serial killer, and 10 being Dr. Seuss, as Matt Moore calls it. Up is down, down is up, cats have hats, eggs are green. Speaking of green, Draymond Green. After shutting down Giannis Antetokounmpo last night, Green was asked if he deserves Defensive Player of the Year. He said, quote, "I look around the league and don't see many players impacting the game on the defensive end the way I do. I don't see many players completely throwing off an entire team's offense the way I do. 1,000,000% I have a case, and I will continue to build that case for these next 13 games. Tonight was a prime example of that." Hayes, Draymond Green as DPOY. Where is this on your Marchometer?
I'm putting this. So one is serious. I'll put this at a 7. I don't believe that he has a very good case at all to win DPOY. If he played like this the whole season, yeah, but come on, Dre. Like, let's not act like we haven't seen periods of time, whole stretches of the season where you were barbecue chicken defensively sometimes. So I can't get behind that.
I'm actually gonna put this as a 3. I think this is serious. I think if you look at why, I always think about this: why do teams win? Like, why do various teams win? With the Knicks, it's their offense. With the Hornets, it's by the grace of God. Like, there's different options for what happens. With the Warriors, it's been defense the entire season. That's been better than their offense by a wide margin, and Draymond's been really good there. I think he's got a case. They're higher in defensive rating, non-garbage time than the Cavs are. Grizzlies have slid. Like, if it's not a member of the Thunder, which I continue to be like, why is it not a member of the Thunder? Surely we can find somebody on the Thunder to give this to for their team defense being one of the best of all time. Then I think Draymond's got a serious case here. I think it's appropriate. I will, however, say he does a lot of crowing about shutting down Giannis after Aaron Gordon took it to him on Monday night. I just think that's probably something.
That's a great point.
He's currently a plus 600 on FanDuel Sportsbook. The favorite still Evan Mobley at minus 280. The Dallas Mavericks, in desperate need of a decent headline, they created a hype video for fans, and instead of making it with love, they decided to make it with AI. And the results, they were interesting. If you're listening to this, this is worth popping over to YouTube for. Let's take a look. Okay. So for the listeners, that clip ended with an AI-generated Anthony Davis pointing 2 pistols directly at his own head. Your 2024-25 Dallas Mavericks, ladies and gentlemen. Matt Moore, where does this effort by the Mavericks rank on your Marchometer?
The Seussiest Seuss that has ever Seussed. The Florps, the Bezos, just the weirdest stuff this season is surreal for this Dallas Mavericks team. Unbelievable. That Mavericks video is based. That is the perfect encapsulation of March NBA.
Hayes.
That is Howard the Duck levels of unseriousness.
Yes!
Like what? Like that's ridiculous. First of all, how much at this point are the Mavericks just really trying to just alienate their whole entire fan base? Why? That was terrible. That was terrible.
It was amazing. I don't think anyone could have come up with something funnier. I think AI might have surpassed humanity just in that moment.
AI's trying to send a message. AI's trying to send a message.
AI said, "Hey, I don't want to be associated with Nico Harrison either."
No one does. AI, Allen Iverson, no one does.
Man.
If you like what you heard today, subscribe to Locked On NBA wherever you get podcasts, including YouTube. We're not done. We're going to break out the Marchometer a few more times before this month ends. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Thanks to Matt and Hayes for all of their expertise. Enjoy tonight's action. A lot of games. Make sure to check out Locked On NBA Game Night on this feed. They will be recapping every single one of them. Be kind to each other. We're going to see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On NBA.